Buen día, espero que ustedes se han disfrutado de las vacaciones de primavera, pero aquí estamos preparando para el examen que es pronto, que va a abrir mañana el 14 de marzo y cerrar el 15 de marzo. Entonces yo sé que practicamos un poco las comparaciones en clase antes de las vacaciones y los exámenes orales, pero quiero explicárselos otra vez en un video para que entiendan mejor si tienen preguntas. Y primero vamos a hablar de comparaciones y después hablamos de los superlativos. ¿Sí? Que en comparaciones tenemos dos tipos. Tenemos comparaciones de igualdad, que son iguales, y tenemos desigualdad, que son cosas que no son iguales. Y bueno, ante todo deben recordar que usamos comparaciones tanto como en inglés, tanto en inglés como en español. So both Spanish and English use comparisons to indicate which of two people or things that they have a lesser, an equal, or a greater degree of quality. So 3 examples that were given in BHL were things like menos interesante, being less interesting, más grande, being bigger, and tan sabroso como, being as delicious as. Y so vamos a repasar primero las comparaciones de desigualdad. So comparisons of inequality, things that are not equal. You know, for example, if we compare Tom Cruise to Shaquille O'Neal in height, they are not equal in height. Okay. These are formed by placing either más or menos before. Now, here's the interesting thing. Más or menos can function both as adjectives and adverbs, so therefore they can come before an adjective, they can come before an adverb, or a noun. So they can come before an adjetivo, un adverbio, un sustantivo. And then they're followed by que. Okay, so these are, in my opinion, the easier ones to create. Okay. Now, atención, note that while English has a comparative form for short adjectives, we have shorter adjectives, things like tall, things are like short, like big. We just add an ER to it, taller, smaller, bigger. But when we have longer adjectives, we don't say something like intelligenter. Okay? But what we do say is like more intelligent. And that's actually the form you want to use all the time in Spanish, regardless if it's a short or long adjective. Okay, so we would have to say more tall, más alto in Espanol. So if you want to think of, how we do not say intelligenter or interestinger, we would say more tall or we would say more intelligent, more interesting. That kind of idea continues through all in Spanish. So here's some examples using un adjetivo, un adverbio, y un sustantivo. Y so 2 examples con adjetivos. Los bistecs son más caros que el pollo. So the steaks are more expensive than the chicken. Estas uvas son menos ricas que esa pera. So these grapes are less tasty than that pear. With an adverb, which remember, an adverb can modify a verb. It can modify an adjective and it can modify another adverb. So here are examples of where it's modifying another adverb. Me acuesto más tarde que tú, el Luis se despierta menos temprano que yo. So I go to bed later than you do. And Luis wakes up earlier than I do. Okay. And con sustantivos, with nouns, Juan prepara más platos que José. So Juan prepares more dishes than Jose, and Susana come menos carne que Enrique, so she eats less meat than Enrique. So we see the difference of the ricas, the carros, both being adjectives, the tarde, temprano being adverbs, and nouns, the platos and la carne. Más con comparaciones de desigualdad. Vemos aquí el camarero. Bueno, el cliente dice, camarero, ¿qué me recomienda? Y el camarero contesta con, le recomiendo el pescado, es mejor que la langosta y menos caro. So we see mejor is a little bit different because some adjectives will have irregular comparative forms. Okay. For example, bueno and malo can be used as mejor or peor. Grande and pequeño can be used as mayor, menor, joven, menor, and viejo, mayor. So when grande and pequeño are being used to refer to age, okay, we actually use mayor and menor. Okay. However, if these adjectives refer to size of things, like la casa es más grande o la casa es más pequeña que. We could also use viejo and nuevo, which I know is the viejo's on the list, but not nuevo. We could say mi casa. If we're talking about the age of a house, mi casa es más vieja que la casa de mi hermana. Y la casa de mi hermana es más nueva que mi casa. Okay, so that's something I know that VHL didn't explain in there. Here's an example with age. Soy menor que tú, which really isn't verdad, isn't right. I would actually say yo soy mayor que tú, porque soy mayor que ustedes. Pedí un plato más pequeño. So here we're using the size of something, a smaller dish. Okay, so I want you to pause the video and I'd like you to look at these three statements and make comparisons. And the last one is an opinion. Nobody's opinion is more right or wrong than another person. It's just how we're phrasing our opinion. So pause the video and fill in the blanks. Okay, so yo tengo 54 años y mi hermana tiene 49. Entonces yo soy mayor que ella y ella es menor que yo. Okay. Tengo 2 hermanas y Cristina no tiene hermanas. Entonces tengo más hermanas que ella y ella tiene menos hermanas que yo. En mi opinión, las papas fritas de In-N-Out son que las papas fritas de McDonald's. So here we've got two choices. Son mejores que las papas fritas de McDonald's o son peores de las papas fritas de McDonald's. Depends on your opinion. Instead of using más bueno or menos bueno, we use mejor o peor. And since we're talking about papas fritas, mejor and peor would have to be plural, mejores or peores. Okay. So the adverbs bien and mal have the same irregular comparative forms as do the adjectives bueno, buena, malo, mala. So using activities, Julio nada mejor que los otros chicos, so he swims better than the other boys. Ellas cantan peor que las otras chicas, so they sing worse than the other girls. And when they're being used here as adverbs, they're not changing. They're going to stay the singular mejor or peor. Versus number 3, where they were being used as adjectives, so they need to agree in the number. Y más con comparaciones de desigualdad. when we have a comparison that involves a numerical expression, instead of que, we're going to use de. So hay más de 50 naranjas. So there's more than 50. So if right after where we would normally put que, we have a number like 50, instead of que, we use de. Llego en menos de 10 minutos. So again, instead of using que, because we have 10, a number, we're going to use de. Las comparaciones de igualdad, these are a little bit more thought-provoking because you do have to pay attention to, are you comparing descriptions, adjectives and adverbs, or are you comparing nouns? Because if we're comparing a description, whether it's an adjective or an adverb, we're going to use tan with como. But if we have a noun, then we have tanto, tanta, tantos, tantas. This is an adjective. Adjectives modify nouns. We know in Spanish, adjectives agree in gender and number with the nouns that they modify. Okay, so some examples with the adjective and adverb. El pescado que preparó Miguel fue tan sabroso como el pescado que preparas tú. Okay, so the fish that Miguel prepared was just as delicious as the fish that you prepare. Los pájaros de nieve conducen tan lento como los mayores que viven aquí. So snowbirds drive just as slowly as the older people that already live here. Okay. Versus the nouns, tengo tanta tarea en la clase de español como en la clase de... Perdón, tengo tanta tarea en la clase de literatura como en la clase de español. So it's tarea singular feminine, so we use tanta. Wendy y yo tenemos 2 hermanos. Tengo tantos hermanos como ella. Ella tiene tantos hermanos como yo. And because it's hermanos, we're going to use tantos. Okay. Note that unlike tan, tanto acts as an adjective, therefore agrees in number and gender, like I've already mentioned. Okay. Where tan is not, so it doesn't make an agreement. Estas uvas son tan ricas como aquellas. Versus yo probé tantos platos como él. Now, we can use tan and tanto for emphasis instead of a comparison. So these are going to mean things like so, so much, and so many. So, tu almuerzo es tan grande. This is something we could replace it with muy grande as well. Comes tanto. You know, we could also say comes mucho, but it's giving more emphasis than just that muy and mucho. Comes tantas manzanas and preparan tantos platos. La comparación de una acción, si es desigual, then we do the verb más que or menos que. So, mis hermanos comen más que yo. Arturo duerme menos que su padre. Okay? If it's igual, then we just use the verb tanto como, and we don't change tanto como. So, tú viajas tanto como mi tía, so you travel just as much as my aunt. Ellos hablan tanto como mis hermanas, so they talk just as much as my sisters. Now, when we're talking about superlativos, okay, the noun is always preceded by a definite article, and the de is the equivalent in English of in or of. So we have a formula. We use the definite article, el, la, los, or las, plus a noun, más o menos, an adjective, and de. Okay. Now, the noun can be omitted if the person, place, or thing referred to is already clear. So, for example, somebody asks, oh, el restaurante Las Delicias. And somebody goes, es el más elegante de la ciudad. We already know it's a restaurant, so we don't have to say es el restaurante.